What's the matter, Mike? Well, a lot of things are happening. This weekend and this year, the time of kind of looking back and looking forward. That's what I'd like to talk to you about tonight. I'm going to ramble around for you know what I'm doing here. I like to get together with friends the way we're doing it tonight on a Saturday night in a rowdy place, and I'm going to try to tell you some of the things that I've been experiencing. I live in an amazing life. I can't believe what happens to me in 1 week. The people I meet, the ideas that I listen to, the experiences. It's my pleasure to share some of these experiences with you, and then to have the chance after I talk for a while, I'll come right down and here. I want to hear what you have to say because I want to, you have your viewpoints too. So, yeah. What I'd like to talk about for a while tonight is something that's very important. The next 12 and a half years are going to lead us up to the year 2000. You're aware of that. You're also aware of the fact that human beings apparently get very freaked out and antsy and kind of nervous and weirdo as you approach the 2,000-year millennium point. You remember 1,000 years ago? You remember 1,000 years ago? You've been there. There was that end of the world thing. It's all going to end, and of course it's going to end. The past is going to end, and a new chapter is going to begin, which scares some people. But there's no question that the next 12 years, as has been true the last 12 years, is going to produce an enormous amount of weirdo stuff. You just look around what's going on. I'm sure you share my beliefs or disbelief every morning you look at the paper, or every evening when you do it, you look at the news and say, well, they thought the 60s was psychedelic, hallucinogenic, and mad. And it's really amazing, isn't it? I was really clued into this last Sunday. Matter of fact, that Convergence Sunday, when a dear friend of mine, Tom Robbins. How many of you know Tom Robbins? Yeah. Wonderful writer, wonderful mind, funny, really powerful thinker, too, in a very easygoing way. He said to me, Timothy, you're not going to believe what's going to happen in the next 12 years. It's going to get weirder and weirder. And indeed, only people who've had some veteran experience, who've logged a lot of time in psychedelic wildness, can really understand, perhaps grapple and move through what's going to happen. It made a great deal of sense to me. So I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about millennium madness. I'd also call your attention to an interesting century. Summer of Love, 20 years anniversary, 20 years, 1967. Why, for example, is the year 1967 taken to be the beginning of the so-called 60s movement? The 60s apparently started in 1967. Well, I can deal with that. It's true that the spirit of individuality, of exploration, of looking within, of a personal voyage, you can go on listing we ain't going to work on Maggie's farm no more. These principles emerged in the late 50s with wonderful people like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac on the road, Neil Cassidy and Ken Kesey, and my favorite writer, philosopher at that time, William Burroughs. You're familiar with him? Yeah. Anyway, these great women and men were getting things going in the late 50s and the early 60s. We were busy at Harvard, but really the thing didn't get started until 67. We all remember that summer of 67. Well, why was it then? Well, I like to do a little arithmetic. Yeah, if you take away 21 years, you get the year 1946. 1946 was the beginning of the atomic age. It was the beginning of the post-industrial age, the beginning of the information age. It was the birth date of the baby boom generation, by far the largest generation in American history, and the generation that was going to become the first species of the new age. So from 1946 at 21, you get 1967. Of course, the Summer of Love was the coming out party, the coming of age party of the first class of the baby boom. And what a party it was. I remember it was in January 14th, 1967. in San Francisco, California. They sent a word out, and we all kind of came there. I don't know why. They said there's going to be a human being. Now, what is that? I never heard of it. Nobody ever heard of a human being. So, love-in. What's a love-in? It's outdoors. Nobody knew. Who organized it? Nobody organized it. The word went out over some free rock station, word of mouth. So, suddenly about 40, 50,000 of us assembled on a January day in San Francisco. And nobody knew go in there except we caught on. The point of the meeting was the numbers. Man, if you could bring in 40, 50,000 people just with word of mouth, and they were all there with that look in their eye, that smile, that twinkle, it was a statement. Hey, there are a lot of us. Now, it didn't hurt to have the Grateful Dead there. Or did it hurt to have Owsley hanging around? But, in any case, that started it. That spring, later on that spring in New York City, there was a bigger love-in. And of course, June, Sgt. Pepper album hit the... I think most people that went through that period remember the very first time. The first time you saw or listened to that album. It's like Kennedy's death. Or you remember Christopher Columbus discovered America? You remember the first time you heard that? It's one of those big moments. Because that album kind of put it all together. It was a statement of a new approach to life, an attitude of confidence, of making music mean something. And the album cover itself, and the fact it was a highly produced, skillfully produced album, with, of course, the lyrics too. Now the lyrics, not that new. God knows, Bob Dylan had to sing it on his guitar a few years earlier, remember? I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. I ain't gonna work for Maggie's pa no more. He hands you a nickel, hands you a dime, asks you with a smile you're having a good time. No, we ain't gonna work on Johnson's farm no more, General Motors farm no more. So that was happening. Well, now, of course, you got to realize that the way we are shackled and enslaved by those who want to enslave us is through language. So, lesson number one, we have to check the language. Now, they talk about the summer of love. Well, come on, there's not one summer of love. Put an S behind it. There's plenty of summers of love. This is certainly a summer of love right now. Yeah. They always try to trap us with that. There was one, like it's one God. Come on, anytime anyone talks about God, you know they're laying a trip on you. Just put that S on the gods. And you change the whole ball game. In gods we trust. Huh? Thank God. It's okay. So, there was not just one summer of love. Don't you remember? Within 6 months, after 67, young people all over the country, in colleges, college towns like this one, started looking at the war and Johnson's Vietnam situation, and they began going clean for Gene McCarthy. And by April and May, Bobby Kennedy, that old tough, rough politician, had thrown his hat in the ring as the kids' candidate. Until that moment, June 4th or 5th, in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, when they shot Bobby, it was a cinch that the kids' candidate, a peace candidate, love candidate, was going to win the election. So that was 68. Next year, another summer of love, another class of baby boomers hit 21. I give you Woodstock. Now, Woodstock, an amazing event. 400, maybe 500 people came up to a cow pasture in upstate New York. Again, there was no big organization. Hell, there was not much sanitation. There was not much adequate food supply. It rained. People were in the mud. And yet, not to mention drugs, wall to wall, 40 acres of drugs. And there was not one recorded act of violence. Can you imagine 500,000 horny teenagers running around half-ass, bare-ass, and not one reported act of intrusion or violence? Because that in itself was the message. People looked around and said, hey, we can do that. And that lesson went all around the world, and that's what they mean. You know, Rolling Stone has recently issued kind of a list. I like these lists of 100 great rock albums of all time. Number 1, Sgt. Pepper, from that first year. Well, I could go on. I don't have to run down the list. There's no question of it. that the summers of love peaked, the 60s peaked, not in the 60s, but the 70s. I would say the 60s peaked in the year 1976 when we elected as our president a howdy-doody, hippie guy named Jimmy Carter was running around in a sleeping bag, quoting Bob Dylan, playing softball with Ralph Nader, you remember? Who is this guy? Where is he from? And talking to Playboy magazine about lust in his heart, remember all that? They'd never seen that in the Potomac before. And the Carter administration, I could cite you hundreds of examples, but one example, in the 4 years of Carter administration, 14 states decriminalized marijuana. That's for starters. Not to mention all that terrible talk about love and peace. I mean, when Ollie North hears that, he gets his automatic rifle out. Here was the President of the United States actually bringing over Sadat and Begin, you remember? Planting them down, and he didn't send the Navy into the Persian Gulf. He wasn't firing, sending Marines in Beirut. He brought these two guys to Camp David and said, hey, Menachem, give peace a chance, baby. Hey, Anwar, all you need is love. I mean, it sounds ridiculous in the Mad Dog, Rambo, Reagan, Ollie North, Pitbull 80s, but that shit was really happening. Can you believe it? Well, the point is that the summers of love really represent the coming of age, or the reassertion by young people who are always, the people that were there 20 years ago are now 20 years, but still going on. Every time a group of young people in this post-war era suddenly look around and say, hey, we don't want the Cold War. Hey, we're not going to work on Sony's farm no more. You got a summer of love. You know what's been happening in, of all places, South Korea in the last 6 months? That's the most uptight, fucking down, gangster, fascist, right-wing military dictatorship in history. And there you had college kids out there in their, T-shirts throwing rocks and flowers at tanks. Now, where do you suppose they got that idea? They didn't get that from Karl Marx. They watched the movies. They watched American television. They listened to the rock and roll records, because the South Koreans have a lot of television, so they're hip to what's going on. So there's a summer of love this year in Korea. I don't know if you know this, but there's a summer of love in Japan going on now. There's a new breed of young Japanese. They're called Shin Jinrui. And you can't believe what the translation is. You think I'm making this up, or I'm quoting Dylan. It means the new breed. Now, you get the Japanese talking about, this is a very, very traditional society. When you get Japanese talking about a new breed, now, what's the point? The young Japanese do not want to scrimp and scrape and save the way their parents did. Sound familiar? They ain't going to work on Sony's farm no more, no Mitsubishi either. They want to spend money. They want to have a good time. They want to they be hedonists. Well, of course, their idea of being hedonist is Haagen-Dazs ice cream, but still, everyone do their own thing, right? Okay, that's a summer of love in Japan. Now, the capper of this incredible, exciting, cybernetic year of 1987 is that the summer of love has finally hit Russia. They got this, what happened was there's a guy named Yakovlev who's part Jewish. He was a Russian, a hot-shot KGB Russian. They sent him to Columbia University in the late 50s. He looked around, saw what's going on. He probably saw Abby and Jerry Rubin there. He read The Village Voice, I'm sure. He probably listened to Allen Ginsberg's Howl. He became the ambassador to Canada, for Russia to Canada for a long time. Now he's the guy that's running this Gorbachev's thing called Glasnost. What does that mean? It means openness. It means, hey, take it easy, cool out, float downstream, don't get uptight. Perestroika means loosen the structure. I mean, it sounds like a 60s rock band, doesn't it? So this happened. There's an interesting experience about 2 months ago. The Russian government invited over a lot of scientists and writers from many different countries, some artists. They have 800 of them there, but the person that got most attention, that drew most of the media attention, who was mobbed when she walked down the streets, was Yoko Ono. Did you hear about that? Written up in Rolling Stone magazine. And there was this amazing conversation, a one-on-one conversation with Yoko Ono and Gorby. That's what the New York Post, the New York Post calls him Gorby. Well, Mrs. Gorby had this one-on-one conversation with Yoko Ono, and Mrs. Gorbachev kind of misty-eyed said, isn't it too bad that John's not here? I could sing, give peace a chance. And she was quoting, Mrs. Gorbachev was quoting from Imagine. Now, can you imagine that happening in the Nancy Reagan White House? And Yoko Ono couldn't get within 100 yards of it. The only ones that get into the Reagan White House are the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and Frank Sinatra, right? So, a lot of funny things are happening. What I think it means is that as we approach the millennium year of 2000, a lot of us that have been through a lot of this stuff are realizing that it all comes down to being just like the rules for an LSD trip. Keep cool. Use your common sense. Don't get caught up in your own momentary hallucinations. It's kind of silly, Ronnie, to be spending all your time trying to beat up on Nicaragua when your country's going in debt. It's kind of crazy, Ronnie, to be sending all those ships over to the Persian Gulf when you're just helping the Iranians, and the Iranians are shooting our people with the guns that you sold them. I mean, is that a bad trip or what? Let's talk Ronnie down here. We've got a lot of problems, Ronnie. The country can't make a car that anyone wants to buy. You got the discrepancies between rich and poor have never been worse. Our education system is starving for money. The racial situation is tragic. It's worse than it was 20 years ago, Ronnie. So let's kind of just take it. Let's cool down. Step by step, day by day, and let's get just a practical kind of business-like approach here. I know it seems funny for me to be saying that, but after all, you can't run things on emotion. Okay, yep, that's a quick rundown of the summer love thing. Now, this spring and summer, I've had the opportunity to have reunions with a lot of the figures from the 60s and 70s, people that I know you have met and probably admired and shared visions with. I've met almost everyone that's still around from the 60s, Benjamin Spock, Hunter Thompson. I mean, there's a wild man. He makes me look like a square, I must tell you that. I talked about Tom Robbins. Yeah, I've had a chance to meet most of my friends from, of course, Baba Ram Das. Yeah, great. Did I have a chair up here? Is it possible? Probably not. Huh? Well, forget it. By the way, speaking of coincidences and synchronicities and so forth, I find it rather eerie. I got a little chill in my spine when I realized that we're meeting tonight in a club called the Underground Railroad. Isn't that hot? I mean, I like that idea, that somewhere in this magnificent valley, a 100 or so years ago, people were risking their lives and fortunes to free slaves. I mean, that's a good omen, huh? Okay, I'd like to tell you a couple of stories about some of the people I've met, give you a flavor of this reunion. I had a weird experience a couple of months ago when I was invited to Toronto, Canada, to have a reunion with, and a debate or a tri-date with Abby Hoffman and Eldridge Cleaver. Now that's it. I couldn't believe that one, so I went up there. Abby Hoffman, by the way, is going to be here in a couple of months. You probably heard him. You know, without any question, Abby is the all-time Olympic champion of rap. I mean, he's a Niagara Falls of the word. Nobody can spin out ideas the way Abby. Abby's got bandoliers of one-liners and cartridge belts and facts. He can tell you how many helicopters Honduras government is using against Contras. talking about the urine testing. You know, he'll tell you how many gallons of urine have been mislabeled. I mean, the guy is just unbelievable. You're gonna come down and hear him and bring a tape recorder because it's Guinness Book of Records stuff we're talking about. Abby has one flaw. No one's perfect. Abby doesn't listen, which makes it easy to debate with him. I just had to just be quiet. And I let Eldridge carry the ball. Now, Eldridge, Cleaver, and I go back beyond the Paleolithic. I mean, we were in prison together. He put me in prison. We're beyond friends and brothers. We're just, I don't know, cosmic. Anyway, I knew Eldridge back in 1968 when he was running for the presidency of the United States on the Freedom Party. Eldridge at that time, I knew him. I would have voted for Eldridge then, probably did. See, the current president, he knows 3 times more than Ronnie Reagan. Ronnie has 1 idea, Eldridge has 3. So I was in Algeria with Eldridge. He said, well, Timothy, there's one enemy. That's a running lackey dogs of Wall Street, the Christian Americans and the Republican Party. Right on, brother. There's only one set of good guys who are either part of the problem or part of the solution. The good guys are the Marxist-Leninists and Kim Il-sung. Oh, shit, man. I never got to explain that one to me. And his 3rd idea was, Mao said it, politics begins at the barrel of a gun. Yeah, is that right, huh? And to prove it, he stuck a gun in my ribs. Can't argue with that. Well, Eldridge has not changed a bit. He's just changed the labels. Tell me, Abby, there's only one enemy, and that's pinko liberals like you, Marxist, Leninists, and so forth. Abby's trying to get the microphone, but they won't let him. There's only one set of good guys, and that's the right wing of the Republican Party and born-again Christians, and we got a nuke Nicaragua. Well, Abby can't wait. He's frothing at the mouth. I was going to try to say something. He grabbed the microphone and me. He says, Eldridge, you can't say that. You can't say, what's it? You can't say you're a black Republican, because there's no such thing. He says you're an oxymoron. Man, who you calling a moron? You're a contradiction in terms. There's no such thing as the black Republicans, like military intelligence. Furthermore, don't give me a shit about being born again. I asked my good Jewish mother about being born again. She said, son, I wouldn't do it the first time, but I know it was going to happen. So I'll give you a flavor of that. You don't miss it when he comes here. My most exciting debates have been this spring and summer with a man who for 5 years was the head of the dread Drug Enforcement Agency. And when they called me, they said, Timothy, would you like to debate the former head of the DEA? Does David want to debate Goliath? Bring him on. Now, it's kind of interesting because I've never spent so much time, even Lady Gordon Liddy wasn't as bureaucratic as this man. He's a nice man. His name is Peter Bensinger. He comes from Chicago. He's an incredible administrator. He's very efficient. He's well educated, considering he's a Yale man. And he's a gentleman. But, I mean, he lives in a vacuum chamber. He doesn't know a thing about drugs. And he's never, seriously about bureaucrats. You think about what goes on in the Oval Office and how did Ollie North and Poindexter and all these people do these weirdo things they did. Because nobody says no. So once you get it going, there's no discussion, there's no other points of view. If you present the other point of view, you're a bleeding heart, wimp, liberal, you get tough, the tougher you are, you get the point. So poor Mr. Bensinger had never in his life, even though he'd been the head of the DA for 5 years and given hundreds of speeches on the subject of drugs, he never talked to anyone who could give him any logical reason why 70 million Americans like to get high. So it's kind of amazing, when I first debated him, he'd make his points about killer weed, Wisconsin and youth, and so forth. And I start debating with him, and at that point he'd say, hey, Timothy, you can't say that. He was like, Abby, you can't say that. I said, why can't I say that? is against the law. What's against the law? To talk. It's supposed to be a debate. Oh, yeah, debate. You didn't like it, though. Which is an interesting thing about bureaucrats and, of course, people in high offices that never listen. But I must tell you, this guy was a pussycat to debate because he had not a clue about how to talk to people. He'd come before a college audience, say 500 or 1,000 horny college students on Friday night, and he'd say, boys and girls, you're going to not believe me, but marijuana is a killer weed. Now, the grass you were smoking 10 years ago, that was that Mexican stuff, but we stopped that. So now the marijuana you're getting is 10 times stronger. He couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't believe it. What's good? No. Killer, killer, killer. It all came down to toot and smoke, or marijuana, cocaine. Well, you know, Mr. Benzinger, let's have a little scientific moment here. Let's look at the record. Let's look at the statistics. If you're seriously concerned about lethal fatalities to the American public, let's look at the record. Now, it is true that cocaine kills around 500 people a year from overdose. That's a tragedy. It's stupid, and we can stop it easily by just accurate education about how not to kill yourself with cocaine. For example, oh yeah, I'm sure there are probably, in a country of 220 million people, I suppose there are 100 people that are going to overdose on ketchup. Leave them out. But if you just taught people what cocaine, does accurately, you can teach people that there are two kinds of cocaine. One is the flash. Now, if you shoot cocaine, if you smoke it in the form of crack or base, no question of it, all these terrible symptoms. See, he's talking about the symptoms of cocaine. Listen, cocaine does have a real effect on your body. Your heart starts to beat, you feel warm, you get flushed, all sorts of biological things are going on, and you feel good for a while. So, Mr. Benzinger, have you ever had an orgasm? It is true that if you shoot or smoke cocaine, you get this incredible, heavy physiological rush. It's like taking a fifth of tequila and downing it all at once. And if you do this 3 or 4 times, or if you smoke crack one after another, you're going to get your head fucked up, and you're going to get your body fucked up, and you're going to be broke very quick. On the other hand, if you toot cocaine, it's it's an entirely different situation. If you toot cocaine, you feel energetic, and you feel euphoric for about an hour or two. It's a hard time going to sleep. You unfailingly become a garrulous, loudmouth asshole. But you'll be alive in the morning. And there's no constitutional law against, being a loudmouth asshole. Most drunks are. Most born-again Christians are. The idea is to try to keep people alive. Keep people alive, Mr. Benzinger. Let's look at handguns. Handguns. If cocaine kills 500, handguns kill between 15 and 20,000 people a year. And the thing about handguns is, the guy with a handgun isn't putting that gunpowder up his nose. He's killing his wife and his lover, or in LA freeways, they're killing people that pass by in a car. So, okay, killing. What kills American people? Well, prescription drugs kill 100 times more than illegal drugs. Booze, my God, booze, 50,000 deaths a year from drunken driving. Another 50,000 from the physiological effects of booze, the killer. By the way, I gotta confess something to you. I'm pretty brain damaged, as you can tell. I've taken so many drugs, particularly psychedelic drugs, that I have to report to you, let's be honest, gotta be mature. There are certain very pronounced side effects from taking too many psychedelic drugs or too much marijuana. The number one effect is a long-term memory gain. That's confusing. Then there's a short-term memory loss. And there's a third one, but I forget what it was. Oh no, I remember. The third thing was deaths from marijuana. Deaths from marijuana. Well, let's be scientific here. Let's call the American Medical Association deaths from marijuana. Let's call the Smithsonian Institute deaths from marijuana. Let's call the United Nations Health Organization deaths from marijuana. Let's go through all the textbooks. Deaths from marijuana. Oh yeah, well, let's face it. Let's bite the bullet. There have been some deaths from marijuana. In the 25,000 years, 90% of the human race has been using marijuana for purposes of celebration, of religious ecstasy, of voodoo trance, mystical experience, a visionary initiation, or just plain fun on Saturday night. In the 25,000 years people have been using marijuana, there have been 12 certified cases of death. And we got to face the facts, they're tragic. There were 4 people that took too much marijuana, and they got the giggles and they laughed themselves to death. Sad, sad thing. There were 4 people that took some marijuana, and they had probably obese and had heart conditions, and they got the munchies and they ate themselves to death. Pigged out. And of course, the most tragic of all, there were 3 or 4 honeymoon couples that got married and they just couldn't wait, and they got some marijuana and they fucked themselves to death. Be careful. Safe sex and safe drugs. How you doing? Should I go on here? I would have talked to you about the 20th century and how we got here, but I'm going to give you a little bit. I'll tell you. Want to hear a Gordon Liddy story? Yeah. Well, before I do that, though, hey, we got to be serious here for 1 minute. I've been making jokes about drugs, and we're talking about a serious situation here. You know that. And I must say that I consider the Reagan White House to be the biggest collection of ring-ding, fruit loop, nitwit, airbrain nuts in history. But there's one place I agree with Nancy Reagan, and that is we got to teach our kids to say no. I've got a 13-year-old son. I've got 13, 14-year-old grandchildren, and my wife and I and my daughter, we don't want our young kids fooling around with drugs. We don't want them fooling around with liquor. We don't want them fooling around with car keys. We don't want them fooling around with guns or any powerful equipment. You know, I'm sure you know, but it's good to remind ourselves that kids today are much more advanced than you were. You know, now 12 and 13, 14-year-old kids, the whole thing is accelerated somehow. And you've got to tell your kids to say no to drugs. Of course, the Republicans are such Rambo pit bulls. They're so nasty. We tell my son and our grandchildren, say no thank you. And you got to be tough. You got to be tough. You got to level with your kid. My 13-year-old kid, I say, you cannot drink. We got liquor around the house all the time. The car keys are in the kitchen, over the sink. You can't use it. If I have a gun, you can't use that, so forth. You can't fuck your mother either, got it? Because you're a kid. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. Pain in the ass to be a kid, but I must say I consider it impudent and impertinent and insulting to our intelligence that Nancy Reagan, of all people, is talking about kids. I know her 2 kids, Ron Jr. and Patty Davis. They're good kids, and they took an enormous amount of drugs when they were growing up. And it's obvious that Nancy Reagan doesn't understand how the only way to deal with a problem like that is, call in Ollie North of the National Guard. Put the National Guard around every schoolhouse. That's the Republican solution. The only way you're going to deal with that problem, and it is a problem, is, the human way. You sit down with your kid And you look them in the eye, and you up your level with them, and and you talk about it, and then you put on pressure, and you have the older kids come around, and you have the neighbors come around, and you use the school. We've all got to be together on this, that you don't want kids. So that's the thing about kids. Now, there's another thing I want to be serious about for 1 minute, about the drug situation. And I'm sure you're pissed off as I am about the fact that the experts on drug use in this country now are the fuck-up ex-addicts. You ever notice that? Doesn't it make you want to vomit over your shoes when you see the television? Some rum-dum that's been in the gutter all his life, suddenly he's an expert on drugs. And, these celebrities, they're going around with all these interviews. They've been throwing up their careers and terrorizing their friends for years. You know them, I know them. Suddenly, they're experts. Like David Crosby. I've known David Crosby for 25 years. He's always been really an abuser of life. He's a fucker. He is. I'm sorry to say. He's made some great music and so forth, but the guy's he's a real fuck-up slob. He's always been there. And this picture on the cover of People magazines now, he's running around with guns and that. He's now on the cover of People magazine. Of course, the problem here is we've all been so media trained, that everyone's a spokesperson. Something happens, you get in front of the television cameras, and you're a spokesperson for some kids. Kids don't like parents, or men don't like women. I don't like you. That sort of thing. We call it the problem of the misplaced predatory pronouns. Instead of saying I, they say we, or my people. So, David Crosby in People magazine, not talking about himself, he's talking about you. He says, you're either going to go to jail, or you're going to die, or you're going to go to a mental hospital, or you, unless you become like me. Well, come on, David, just say I. Now that particular debate came up, the issue came up in a debate I had with G. Gordon Liddy. Have you ever heard of G. Gordon Liddy? The guy's funny. I mean, he's 10 times smarter than Ollie North. I'll give it to Nixon. Nixon had his own problems, but the people around him were much smarter than the Reagan Zoological Garden. Gordon's a smart cookie. Gordon's position, is I have never had an unauthorized thought in my life. I was talking about drugs. Well, Gordon, how can you talk about drugs? Never been high. That's true. I have never had an unauthorized drug in my life. I said, well, ever had any authorized drugs? Yes. I must be honest. There was one time when I was in a military hospital and a captain in the medical corps ordered me to take a painkiller for my pain. I took it. I felt the pleasure. I felt the pain go away. And I resolved I would never do this again. And I requested my commanding surgeon, please, do not give me any more drugs. I'd rather have the pain than the pleasure. I was debating Gordon about drugs, and that same rap I did you about David Crosby. I told you about a great friend of mine is Dennis Hopper. Good to see you. Blue Velvet. Well, Dennis really having a role, and I've known Dennis again for 25 years, and I'm not saying anything that ever has been said in print. So Dennis, he's kind of a mean character. He always has been. And he'll say it himself. So, you remember Easy Rider? You've seen Dennis in action, and now that he's not taking drugs. One of the things about people that give up drugs, that's all they want to do is talk about it, right? You notice that? Dennis saying, man, don't talk to me about drugs, man, because I've taken more drugs, man, than you've ever thought of taking, man. Before noon, I'd drink 2 bottles of tequila, man. Talk about cocaine, man. You don't know nothing about cocaine, man. Give me that fountain pen, man. See that fountain pen? I'd make 2 lines of cocaine like that every 10 minutes, man. See? That acid, man. We used to take acid in the evening, sit around holding hands, man, and talking about peace and love, man. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, man, we were at our dealer's door with a gun in our hand. Don't say we, say I. I've taken a lot of acid. I've never been in my dealer's house. I've never had a gun. You want to talk about guns, talk to my right-wing opponent here, Gordon Liddy. Gordon's here. Once again, I must interrupt my esteemed but brain-fried opponent. I've trapped him again in an era of logic and fact, which his poor brain cannot understand. The facts are that I, Gordon Liddy, do not own one gun. Jeez, Gordon Liddy doesn't own a gun? That's like the Pope doesn't have a crucifix. As a 7-time felon of the federal government, I'm forbidden by law to own a gun. Mrs. Liddy, however, has the largest collection of guns in Northern Virginia. And if Mrs. Liddy, within her constitutional rights, decides tonight to have 3 of her guns on my side of the bed, and if during the night, through the window comes some liberal, democratic, pinko faggot, communist Nicaraguan lover, out of the way. Anyway, it's very difficult to debate Gordon Liddy. How are we doing? You want to take a stretch? You want to take a break? You want to take a 5-minute break? Stretch? Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. It's hot and okay. I'll be back. I'll stay as long as you want, okay? I'll come back and we'll talk some more. Okay. Thank you. That was great music. I propose to talk a few more minutes, and then I'd like to go down and leave the crowd, but I don't think I'll be able to do so many. But I urge you to ask questions, or to make points, or to illuminate and enlighten me and everybody else. I've been,
Wondering, social, political, you still have to bomb it out or what?
Yeah, I'll answer that later, okay? We are in the information communication age, and it is our function, if you want to be a contributing member of this experiment called the human species, it's really our duty to become better and better communicators. And I fault myself, and have many regrets about the fact that I was not able to communicate more efficiently. God knows I communicated effectively, but it was never as precise as I would have wanted to, so that I think I'm going to try to make this point in the next few minutes, that we've got to become skilled communicators and use all of the technology and equipment that's available now as moving the information age to send out signals of ecological intelligence and evolutionary progress. Now, I understand there's a bookstore in town called the Bookshelf. Books are becoming less and less important in communicating, but still, during this transition period in the next 50 years, we will be depending upon books, and I understand that the Bookshelf is a place where you can get books by me and by people who share our values and our hopes. I'm a great fan of a man named Robert Anton Wilson. You know him? We've been buddies and partners for a long time. Wilson and I are developing a relationship with a publisher. We're trying to see, as you know, the publishing business now is totally conglomerate and totally industrial, and it's just like the Industrial Society of Detroit. They're cranking out millions of copies of books that, just like cars that nobody wants to drive, books that really are cluttering up the environment. So there's a press in California called Falcon Press, which derives from Aleister Crowley. How many of you know that name? And they're kind of students of George Gurdjieff, and they had been publishing Wilson and sponsoring Robert Anton Wilson in his lectures. And I'm joining with them. We're trying to develop a system that will bypass the commercial publishers, and anyone that has a book that really they want to get out there, we work out a kind of a partnership or a collaborative way in which they can get their book published. So they've given me 100 or so of these flyers. So anyone that wants to get in touch with me or know more about Robert Anton Wilson or participate in this publishing experiment, these little folders are around. If they're not, we'll get them to you. Okay, now what I'd like to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes is I want to tell you about how I see what's been going on in this country and the world in the last 2 decades. Now, there's a lot of talk about decades, and that's good. It's good to have measurements of time and chronology. We can check ourselves, see how we're changing. But I must tell you, I have an advantage, certain advantages. There's certain disadvantages too, but I have an advantage. I'm 67 years old. Now, what that means is I've been around for 7 decades. And And I've not been a vegetable or a passive person. I've been active. Anytime anything is happening in the way of intelligence, or some new idea, or some new technology, or some new way to help us get smarter, I've been running after it. So I've been watching the 7 decades that I've been around this century, and I think, number one, this is the most exciting century we've ever had. I call it the roaring 20th century. Because my perspective now, I don't fuck around with decades. I see the whole thing in centuries and millennia. And I don't think you really understand what's been going on in this country and the world. Let's get this picture of what's been happening in the last 7 or 8 decades of the 20th century. The 20th century started, obviously, at the year 1900, when 3 cybernetic, psycho-whack-out German philosophers produced a theory of reality which works. It's called quantum mechanics or quantum physics. Now, the first of this trio, talk about a rock and roll trio, the first one was Albert Einstein. Have a round of applause for him. Albert Einstein said that there is no absolute space and time. That I can see you, but I'm moving and changing, you're moving and changing, so that what I see is relative to where I am and where you are, and it's always changing. In other words, now, of course, that is a heavy-duty concept coming at the 1900s when the typical American would probably be personalized or symbolized by that Grant Wood painting. You remember American Gothic? This American farmer with his pitchfork and his wife there. Well, you think of farmer Grant Wood, and here comes Einstein telling him, hey, that solid world that you're plowing is all relative. And what's that Jewish guy talking about, Mother? I mean, you can't handle that. Well, to make things worse, a man named Max Planck came along and said, listen, Farmer Wood, this solid reality that you think about, this Newtonian world, reality of force and matter and momentum and power and work and energy, throw in some Bank of England concepts like conservation of energy, hey, that's just a temporary thing. Actually, the universe is made up of quanta like this. From the galaxies, the stars, star systems, to the atom and the nucleus of the atom, everything's made up of clusters of off-on probabilities that form temporary. Now, is that a bad acid trip or what? I put my hand here and it goes through. Now, Grant Wood, farmer, can't handle that. Turn that guy off, huh? And the climax of this uneasy cybernetic philosophy came when Werner Heisenberg said, you make up your own reality. Your reality, what you see of reality, depends upon your sense organs. If you're colorblind, you won't see colors. Depends on the instrument you use, microscopes, telescopes, and of course the models that you use. In other words, there's no absolute reality. Everybody's writing their own script. Now, to a good Protestant farmer America at the turn of the century, that's the ultimate bad trip. To make matters worse, these physicists were communicating their theories in the form of Paleolithic caveman drawings, chalk on blackboards. Nobody could understand it. Probably 10 people in the world understood what Einstein was talking about. Okay, here's the situation. No question, they're right. There's no question the reality is made up that way because the atom bomb showed us that, and Einstein watched the light, the stars bounce off Mercury. No question that quantum physics works, but nobody can understand it, and nobody wants to understand it because it blows apart the static, solid world. Okay, in situations like this, where the genetic duty, the evolutionary task of the 20th century was to somehow take a species of farmers and factory workers, solid steel, metal, and somehow make them feel at home and comfortable and confident in the cybernetic, psychedelic world. Okay, in the evolution of humanity, who is it that comes through at these moments of crises and makes us feel comfortable with the mysterious and make us feel confident dealing with the implausible and the non-intuitive? Well, there's one caste or class of human beings who do this. Who are they? They're the artists, right? The painters, the musicians, the composers, the storytellers, right? the writers, the poets, the visionaries, the wacko scientists. There are hundreds of names for these men and women who somehow make us feel like Homer, the great poet, saying, hey, go beyond the Mediterranean, the wine dark sea, out beyond the pillars of Hercules. Hey, you can do it. See, it was the artists, the first group of human beings that made us feel at home with the reality of how things are. It was, of course, the modern artists, the Impressionists. They took away the representational art and showed you shimmering screens of color. And then the Expressionists, pure Heisenberg. Each expressionist had his own or her own subjectivity there. The Cubists, planes and shifting cubes of perceived sensation. The Surrealists, When Salvador Dali had that painting, The Persistence of Memory, remember when he had the watches going over like that? Pure Einsteinian relativity of time and space. You get the point. Modern writing and poetry has all been subjective. Stream of consciousness. James Joyce was not a writer, he's a word processor. The history of writing in the 20th century was to get us comfortable with reading and writing and dealing with the words that are moving around, not chipped and marble and mosaic tablets. But the real breakthrough that helped us understand that we can deal with the universe is made up of light speed units, was a group of very important, distinguished, heroic audio engineers and acoustic technicians and scientists of Afro-American descent who came up the Mississippi River from New Orleans and introduced the amazed Midwest of Chicago to jazz. Jazz is classic quantum physics. Why? Because it's all solos and improvisation and syncopation. There's Einstein doing a rag over here on the piano. And over here's Heisenberg listening with his own clarinet. He's never played the same way. They can go on with risk. The point of jazz is, number one, you can improvise. Number two, I can listen to you and I can harmonize. The jazz musicians laid out the future of the human race in that simple but very complex notion of jazz. We know what on. Every decade of the 20th century, the 20th century, has made us feel more comfortable with dealing with the crazy, psychedelic, cybernetic, madhouse reality of the mystery of how things really are. Radio. Who would believe that Farmer Wood, the most practical Iowa farmer, would possibly accept this ridiculous miracle of a little radio set he'd dial and tune, and suddenly he's getting simultaneous messages from hundreds of thousands of miles away? Now, is that magic? Can he do it? Yeah, he can do it because he's listening to Amos and Andy, and he's listening to swing bands. He's also doing this. He's listening to history being made. Farmer Wood, in his Iowa farmhouse, can dial and tune, and he can hear Adolf Hitler, Nuremberg, announcing World War II. And Mrs. Wood is crying because she's listening to something happening in London, England. She's listening to the King of England giving up his throne for the woman he loves. She's listening to Shakespearean history being made. It's like being there when she's across the Rubicon. Suddenly, the cloistered walls of human experience are broken down. Where we can be everywhere. We can be zooming around the globe at the speed of light. And Farmer Brown not only can deal with it, he loves it. When Amos and Andy was on a radio show, you'll remember it, in the late 20s, early 30s, everyone in America, everyone would stop on a Friday night, even the theaters would stop. And we'd all listen. 100 million people would be listening to these two black cab drivers, the Fresh Air Cab Company, Amos and Andy. Now, the profound thing there is that you're linking up 100 million people. They're conscious. It never happened before. If millions of people would be experiencing the same thing at the same time. A collectivity, a cybernetic culture, a cybernetic species is developing because of the quantum physical light speed energy. Well, it goes on. You had movies. Who would believe that Farmer Wood would take for reality shimmering, flickering images on a screen? Well, it turns out that the human brain, even the brain of an Iowa farmer, is a quantum mechanical, cybernetic, speed of light instrument. The human brain doesn't want to watch words being chipped on marble. The human brain doesn't want to even watch stuff being printed on factory books. The human brain can deal with 1 million messages in bytes and signals a second. The human brain wants to be stroked, strobed, and electrified straight with quantum speed of light energy. No question of it. You give people a choice, and they'll go to that screen. And why? Why not? See, Farmer Wood lived in, say, a town in Iowa with 100 people. He'd never seen, with all due respect to Mrs. Wood, he'd never seen an elegant, well-dressed, sexy, upper-class woman. There he is watching Clara Bow. Her big red lips are bigger than his body, and she's licking those lips and looking at him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wood sees Rudolph Valentino stroking his mustache and looking in her eyes. So there's no question of it. The human race, human species adores. The human brain needs cybernetic speed of light information as we need air and water. Of course, I could go on, but the real breakthrough came, of course, with television. Television. Who could believe this disaster? Television. The average American household watches television 7.4 hours a day. Have we struggled for 4.5 billion years? Has the Gaia principle, DNA code, struggled on this weird little planet for 4.5 billion years to produce a species of couch vegetables? It's a scary business. You know, George Orwell wrote that incredible book, 1984. He thought he was giving us the ultimate nightmare. He said, Big Brother's going to have in your house a screen. He's going to be watching you in the living room, and you in the bedroom, and you in the bathroom. Big Brother's going to know. The actual reality is 10,000 times more horrible. Big Brother doesn't care to watch us because he's got us trained to line up 200 million of them for 7 hours a day with a big octopus eyes sucking up that shit being put out in electrical energy. That's the ultimate nightmare. Well, looks kind of bad for the human race, doesn't it? But it always happens. It's the greatest story of evolution. At the right time, when it's needed, the evolutionary process produces the solution. And the solution in this case was brought forth on this planet not in a manger in Bethlehem, but in a garage in Silicon Valley. And it was produced by two saints, St. Stephen I and St. Stephen II. I'm talking about Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, who did not invent, but they produced and popularized the first personal screen that you can change. And they called it the Apple. I've talked to both Wozniak and Job, and I asked them, did you realize what you're doing when you call it the Apple? With Apple with a bite out of it? What do you mean, man? Well, by the way, Steve Jobs, he's got a book coming out about him. He's an amazing person. He was by all odds the most successful and richest single person that's ever lived on the planet Earth. By the time he was 24, and the interesting thing about Jobs comes out in this book is he was a total Hindu acid head. You know that? Yeah, he just took all the LSD that was in California, then moved up to Reed College, didn't go to class, did nothing to take acid, then went to India, spent 1.5 years in a loincloth in India, running around, finally came to this conclusion, which is interesting. Steve Jobs came to this conclusion in India that Thomas Edison did more for the human race than Buddha. Kind of interesting. Came back, and the rest is history. And for years, when Steve Jobs was interviewing people for Apple, he had 10,000 people working for him. He's just an acid head with a dream. The first question he'd ask anyone was, how many times have you taken acid? Now, I don't endorse that. Jobs is a kind of a mean, spoiled kid in many ways, and I don't think you should say that, but it gives you a flavor of what was going on in Silicon Valley in the mid-'70s. The profound thing about the personal computer is, see, before Jobs and Wozniak, everybody, all of us hated the computers. It was IBM, the KGB, and CIA, remember? And big monstrous mainframes that cost millions of dollars, and you had to have security clearances. And in colleges, if some hackers and wild kids would try to get in and use a computer for personal use or for just for fun, they would be arrested. The computer belonged to the organization and the institution and to the like that. The idea that anyone would want a personal computer, DEC, which is a mini computer company, said these guys came to them and said, "Hey, we put out a personal computer." They said, "Well, why would anyone want a personal computer in their home? You don't have a payroll. Where'd you keep it? In the garage?" They didn't get the point. The same thing happened with Gutenberg. Gutenberg invented the printing press, which the mini, micro, wood pulp thought processing computer, the book. The Vatican didn't realize what was involved in here. They thought, the Vatican, hey, printing press is wonderful. There's 4 uses. Databases, that's good for the monks. Word processing, the monks won't have to do the illuminated manuscripts. And it's good for accounting and for spreadsheets and all that, because all of our taxes and so forth. And you can use it for games, possibly, but it never occurred to the Vatican. It was 100 years after Gutenberg, every city and town in Europe would have a printing press and printing out this stuff and all sorts of wild ideas. People are learning how to read and write. Before Gutenberg, no, you and I couldn't write. God could write. And the monks, illuminated manuscripts, they knew the machine language Latin. But you were not allowed. You'd be killed if you tried to put your own ideas on a piece of paper. Well, the same thing with the screen. Now, the interesting crossroads we're facing now is that you and I have to learn how to control what goes on our screen. We're finished with lining up and going to a big movie theater and having MGM put something on the screen there. We're through with having ABC and NBC deciding what's on our screens, even Turner Broadcasting in our TVs. And certainly it's true that most of the software for the personal computers is still company-oriented. There still has not been one software book written which uses the potentialities of the computer to allow the individual to put your ideas on the screen. There will be, within 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, there will be compact disc storage systems. You can have 100 movies or videos or news broadcasts stored. You can have your own X-rated home movie that you shot last night. You can have that stored digitized. You can have thousands and thousands of records and audio tapes. You can direct, produce, script, and even star in your own movie. The idea that you wouldn't be writing on screens, it's just, you're illiterate. This is now you have to read and write with a newspaper, with paper and pen. So all this is happening. Now, in order to make this happen, of course, I've left one thing out. In order to prepare us to understand, we have to speak in terms of quantum, speed of light, clusters of on-off bits on screens. How can you get a civilization, a species of human beings who work with books and print press? How can they possibly learn to make this shit? Well, you have to have something that will activate, boot up, help them access the basic biocomputer of the brain. Oh, yeah, how are you going to do that? Well, there's a man named Albert Hoffman in Switzerland in the late 30s, early 40s. He developed and produced neurotransmitters that would definitely boot up the human brain and turn the human brain into, for 4, 6, or 8 hours, a monstrous, major macrocomputer. Looking back, you see, it was inevitable that you had to have a psychedelic inner neurological technology to prepare people to use the screen electronic technology. So psychedelics precede cybernetics. They go together. Is that clear? All right. Anyway, I won't go on any far more. I just want to tell you this. This is the end of my locker room talk. This is the end of my sermon here, but the next 12 and a half years, leading us up to the year 2000, without any question, going to be a wing-ding, razzmatazz 12 years. And the insanity of the Reagan White House, and look at Gary Hart. I mean, he flipped out, right? I mean, what's the lesson of Gary Hart? All these liberals going, Jesus, what's going on here? Gary Hart, no. What's the lesson? He says, well, everyone's feeling discouraged. What's going on here? Well, the point is, it's all over. That sort of politics of selecting a leader is over. That's futile. If we got a culture of 200 million people that are communicating in screens and telecommunicating and modems and voting regularly, we don't need Gary Harts. We don't need men or women on white horseback. It's obvious, for example, that I intend to influence the 1988 elections, not by selecting a candidate, but by just pointing out the basic issue here. By definition, any man or woman that announced he or she wants to run for president is out. They're obviously slipped out. Okay. We'll give you a white horse and a throne, okay? But get your ass out of the mainstream. We've got, and I want to tell you, the people that are going to be very useful in the next 12 years are going to be people that have some experience with moving their own consciousness around, because they get very weirdo. We've got to be able to talk people down. We've got to talk the country down. And I think we've got to select not leaders, but committees and teams of people that, number one, are commonsensical. Number one, that are kind of practical. Remember, they don't have any wild, visionary, emotional, idealistic greed. Fuck it, man. It's only a drug. Cool down, baby. Let's cook the bread and let's pay the rent and balance the budget, okay? We'll settle the evil empire next year, okay? Notice I'm not suggesting any names. Somebody like Andy Rooney, maybe. That's my person. See, I'm just bumbling along with you, getting high with you, but anyway, think about it, and I think for those of us that have some clue as to what has been happening in the roaring 20th century, we're going to have to learn to use the screens. We'll also understand what's going on. If you get this point of view, it becomes very clear. And number one, of course, I'm sure we all learned this from our acid experiences and from marijuana experiences and from just plain living through the last 20 years. You got to have a sense of humor. Don't trust anyone who takes himself so seriously and running around trying to solve the problem, man. Pay the rent. See if you can have a relationship with one person before you start solving the world's problems. I've had enough of this religious bullshit. I want to tell you, anytime people talk to me about religion, get out. I mean, don't use that metaphor, because all the problems of the human race for 2,000 years have been people wandering around dressing up that. If you want to talk about gods, use the plural gods, and usually with not a capital G, because the challenge, of course, is for all of us learn how to gracefully play that game with each other. Okay, folks, that's the locker room pep talk. All right. I certainly urge you now to challenge me, and I like rowdy, restless, irreverent crowds, so get wild, all right? I'd like to come down there, but I don't think I can. Huh?
Plenty of room. What about Michael Harrington? Hey!
I'll try to come down and see what happens.
Right. Hey!
Yeah.
You talked a lot about you talked a lot of names.
Michael Harrington is wonderful. What, tell us? 30 seconds. Tell us about it.
Well, kind of I was just curious about that. You talked a lot of names tonight, and so.
Yeah, and I can on it. So, what do you think about the non-committal component attitude that young people today? They're not involved in anything.
You're talking about people that are not involved in anything?
I'm talking about young people, 18 and under, right around there, that aren't involved. It's not like it was 10 years ago. They're not involved. They just want daddy's car.
This is a very important question, a good one to end on. The question is this, or the point is this. The college students today seem to be less active and less self-confident and less in charge of their lives than they were 5, 10, 20 years ago. It seems to me that many college students, there's this theory anyway, that they're kind of whipped dogs. They're scared economically, they're frightened, they're conforming. Is this true? Partly, I don't know. I tend to be skeptical. I don't think the college students today are conservative. I think that the press wants us to believe that. I think that they're realistic. I think they're practical. I think they're very skeptical. The average young person today doesn't give a fuck about the Democratic Republican Party. I mean, they're kind of cynical about all these big causes. I think, though, that they're intelligent, and I think that if we, who think we have something better to offer, give them an agenda. I tell you, I talk to college students, the so-called apathetic college students. God damn, I can get them cheering, shouting, and moving. I mean, you can do it, but you got to give them something that's realistic, that's common sense. That a 10-year-old kid, you got to be practical, no preaching. It's got to be funny. It's got to make common sense. It's got to make street smart sense. Because no one today wants to follow any more of the. And there's no question of it. In the 60s and 70s, we did get a little exaggerated. There was a little too much utopianism. We didn't realize how tough it was going to be. We tended to bullshit a lot, and we singing songs, and we took drugs that made it sound easy. So we got to be tough in the good sense of the word.
So what's common sense today? On revolution. What's coming today? Say something.
Number one, you've got to develop your own self-confidence. You've got to love yourself and feel in total control, navigate control of your own life. Don't lay off moralizing and generalizing and preaching about the young people unless you know what you're doing yourself. And the second is start with 2 or 3 friends and work out some communication. Learn how to be a better communicator. And let's lay out these big programs of, I'm a great hero of politics and I'm an ecological saint. Bullshit. I think I made my point. Listen, I can sincerely tell you that it's a very rare, memorable experience for me. I've never felt more at home in any place at the right time, in this valley, with this audience, in this club, with Marshall. A round of applause for Marshall. Thank you, Marshall. See you soon. Good night.
Thank you.